Hello and welcome to the SE Podcast. I'm your host, Justin McRoberts. This is a podcast committed to helping you navigate whatever waters you are in. After many years, I think it was 8 or so years of interviewing other people, what we figured out, producer Dan Portnoy and I figured out, was that the best way to actually help you was to take questions directly from you. So I take questions from Instagram, have been doing it once a week. We've skipped a couple weeks. And I take questions from you at Instagram and answer a few of them by way of text, and then build a podcast episode around the things that you're navigating and do the best I can to give you tools and practices and sometimes some wisdom and some insight. I won't pretend like I've got all that, so that you can navigate the waters you are in. So you are at sea with Justin McRoberts. So I'm going to dive into some of these questions and see if we can help you out a little bit this week. This first question, very, very simple question. It never comes up. So it's very, anyways, what are some ways to foster unity in a church community that is is politically split? Whew. Let's just take a moment. I'll say a few things. One is, it seems to me nowadays that engaging in what we now call politics has mostly to do with turning our wills and turning our better interests over to agencies and elements that don't have our best interests in mind. So in some ways, like a church that is split politically, a community that is split politically, I'm not saying at all that it is hopeless. I am saying you can't go right after the beast itself. In other words, there isn't a way to become unified politically. So, which I don't think this is what you were asking, but I don't think we can become politically unified because the world of politics, the political world as it is executed by those in power, doesn't allow for unity. In fact, it's leveraged towards splitting people up and creating enemies out of neighbors. That's actually what the machine is trying to do. And I'll come back to this when I talk about what I think is not necessarily a remedy, but like, you said foster, which I think is a great word, to foster unity is, we'll come back to this, that the politics of today, and the political machinery that runs what we call the political world, is almost exclusively about negation. It's very rarely about this is what we're about, and almost entirely about this is what we are against. So it's not we're going somewhere and let's take some people with us. Most of the time, it's that there are people in the way and there's a problem in the world we're going to fix. And the problem in the world we're going to fix has to do with some of your neighbors and the way they live. Some of your neighbors politically, some of your neighbors locally. The political world is leveraged against unity because it needs you to dislike people, and it's going to get you to dislike people in a way that energizes itself. And the way it energizes itself is that this political party or this political ideology will help you eradicate the problem, and the problem is your neighbor. So, I don't have a fix for that. I don't have a fix for the political world. God, I hope someone does at some point. But how do you foster unity in a church community that is politically split? The arts and creativity. And here's why. Because when we engage in a creative practice together, we get to decide on what we want to achieve together. And there's something in the human soul that loves that feeling so much that it's willing to actually dismiss other things. I will forget our differences if you and I can actually achieve something together that we sought out to do together. And the arts give us a way to do that. In other words, pick a project. Maybe it's a large-scale project. Maybe it really is something as simple as like an arts and crafts practice among you as a church community. But pick something that y'all can do together to decide to do on together. And don't just do the practice, but actually engage in the creative practice and then do a little lectio afterwards and about it. Like, what did you notice about yourself? What did you notice about your neighbor? Get people involved in creativity, in making things, in forward thinking, in solving problems together, even like small problems that don't really have big, like Legos are a problem, right? Get folks in the practice of creativity and problem solving together, and then ask them to reflect on what happens in their guts as they're doing those things with their neighbors. The arts end up being a way for us to actually think about who we want to be long term. That's what art practices do more than anything else, is they get in our guts and they ask us questions about who we are and what I'm capable of, as opposed to questions about who you are and how do I work my way around you, or what's wrong with you. The arts ask questions, certainly problem-solving questions, but they're not about like this. They're not problem-solving questions like the political world asks. They draw something more redemptive out of us. So, how do you foster community, foster unity in a church that is politically split? I think the arts are your pathway. Feel free to reach out and we can talk about that in depth. Speaking of arts and art practices, this is about individual art practices. Tips on sticking with a dedicated routine spiritually and creatively. So the best advice I can give you when it comes to sticking with a routine is to keep it small and keep it regular. Don't try to do too much, otherwise you end up feeling like a failure, and that feeling of not being able to do it is gonna be the thing that keeps you from doing it. Go small and stay regular. That's the ball game. Pick one thing you want to do. Pick one thing you want to achieve. Pick, if there's a spiritual practice or a creative project or a creative practice, pick one thing and keep it small and then stick with it. The sticking with it part actually comes after making it small. What we tend to do is we tend to want to change everything all at once. I want to be an artist and I want to have a life that is centered on or disciplined around an artistic or creative practice. Or I want to get my faith life in order and I need to get and when we say that, we tend to mean getting everything in alignment. If you want to change your whole life, plant seeds and water them with regularity. So, a few examples. Let's say we're talking about a spiritual practice. One spiritual practice might be something like silence. I want to foster some peace in me. I want to foster some silence in me. Okay? So, some folks will talk about something like just pure silence, or something more like centering prayer, which if you reach out, I can send you some resources on centering prayer. And instead of deciding like the greats of centering prayer or contemplative silence do, like 20 minutes at a time, find yourself 3 minutes a day that you can get quiet. Or you want to talk about journaling. Instead of deciding that you're going to journal every day and you're going to journal like 4 or 5 pages, I'm saying pick like 2-3 days a week in which you pull out your journal and you write until you don't feel anymore and then quit. Stay small, make it regular, plant seeds and water them over time. What we trust when we invest in these things creatively and religiously is not our will as it exists. It's that actually if we give ourselves over to the better forces in the world, to divine forces in the world, like we will be met by hands that actually help us get better than we can make ourselves. So trust that if you plant the seeds of creativity and spiritual renewal, and you water them regularly, things will happen that you cannot see. Things will happen that you could not have planned on. There's more available to you than there is in your own will. So stay small and don't let the feeling that you can't do it get in the way of you doing it. Let's do a couple more. We've got a few minutes here. I don't want to make this episode super duper long. But there are a couple here that I want to get to that have to do with having hard conversations. But I want to stick in the realm of the arts for right now. And this person, art and religion, how do you keep yourself motivated? Was the question. Just general. How do you keep yourself motivated? And I actually loved answering this. How do you keep yourself motivated? I don't stay motivated. Pressfield says that motivation or inspiration are for amateurs and that the professional doesn't need them. So inspiration and motivation will get you into a practice, will get you doing a thing initially, but they won't keep you there. I wrote about this in a book called Title Pending, in which I said that seeing the mountain from across the valley, like you want to get to the mountain because it looks beautiful, and that's inspiration. It gets you to the foot of the mountain, but it is practice, it is discipline, it is work that actually gets you up the hill. The difference between amateurism and professionalism in this context is that vision of the mountain is something you actually lose as a professional. As an amateur, I like the feeling of wanting to do it. It's enough for me. That's the thing I'm chasing. I'm chasing that motivation. I want to stay motivated. I like being inspired. So I see the mountain from across the way, or I imagine the project, or whatever it is that kind of gets me fired up. And then I end up chasing that feeling of inspiration. As a professional, I actually lose that vision, I actually lose that sensation, I actually lose a perspective on the whole thing. And I fall in love, and this is again from that book, Title Pending, I fall in love with the work. I just commit myself to 400 feet of dirt at a time. So how do you stay motivated with regards to religious practice or art or artistic practice? You don't count on being motivated. Remember your motivations. Remember that you had this vision of who you wanted to be or what you wanted to accomplish. And then work with a coach, spiritual director, and make some plans that you can stick to and will stick to when your motivation runs out. And then here's what happens. That inspiration that leads you into practices, as that goes away, it gets replaced by the deep, deep, deep joy of actually becoming the person who does these things because it's in your guts. You're not inspired to. It's not like, this is a terrible analogy. It's not like you had a couple drinks and you got really excited about a thing, and then you have to have another couple drinks to get excited about it again. Like, we've been there in multiple facets of our lives. What happens is, as you actually do the work that makes you that artist, the thrill and the joy of actually being someone who does these things because it's in you, it replaces the need you had for motivation. So don't stay motivated, get to work. These last two questions, I'm going to treat kind of as one question, because the one has to do with argumentation. It says silly and repeated arguments. How do I both be understanding but also break the cycle? The other question is hard conversations. Do I just cannonball in, use the compliment sandwich, or something else? And there's an overlap here that you're going to hear, which is why I'm treating these in parallel to one another. Let's talk about silly arguments. If you are having silly arguments with someone, specifically with someone you're around regularly, you're probably not talking about the thing you're supposed to be talking about, right? If it's a silly argument, 9 times out of 10, there's something underneath that thing. And like, I don't really want to talk about what we're supposed to be talking about, so we're having this silly argument. If it's silly, then it can't matter enough to keep bringing it back up. So there's probably something underneath it. So take some time to figure out, like, what am I actually pissed about? Why am I actually irritated at this person? If this is silly and it's repeated, then there's probably something else underneath it. Which brings me to this. If it's silly and repeated, lose. Like, what would it look like to lose some arguments? We argue about too many things. And I think we've been convinced, maybe it's about the internet, maybe it's more than this, but it seems to me that we have been culturally trained to try to win every argument on the table, that every hill is worth dying on. And maybe it comes from this like odd place in which societally and culturally, we still believe that we come to relationships through the doorway of agreement. And I don't think that's true. That actually being in alignment with other people is more a matter of will than it is rightness. So make a sacrifice of your rightness for the sake of relationship. The relationship is always more important than the topics you discuss across the board. If a thing is silly and repeated, lose some arguments and let that sacrifice of your ideological whatever, like, actually water the soil around that relationship, and then see what grows out of it. It's not enough. It's not soul satisfying for us to be right about things. And I'm almost convinced at this point that our pursuit of rightness and correctness is keeping us from depth in relationship. The part of why we're so damn lonely, across the board. Part of why there's so much loneliness is because we are so committed to our ideological correctness and to being right about things that we're sacrificing relationships on the altar of rightness and correctness and right thinking. And what it would look like for us to flip that script. Be wrong, like eat it. Even though you know you're right, say, okay, that's fine. I don't want to fight about this. You're right. Let's see what happens. Like eat your correctness, eat your rightness, and see what happens in your communal and personal life. Let's talk about the overlap here, like the arguing about too many things. When this person writes about hard conversations, they say, hard conversations, do I just cannonball in? Do I use the compliment sandwich, which is the compliment sandwich is basically like, I'm going to say something nice so that I can say something hard. And then I'm going to say something nice afterwards to make you feel good about it. It's basically manipulation. So no, don't ever use it. Or is there some other way? These are the things I said online when I answered this. I said, first of all, have fewer arguments. And that's the overlap. It's like we just argue about too many things. And there's just no way in the world there are this many hard conversations to be had. The second thing is only have hard conversations with people you actually trust and care about. And this comes back to losing more arguments. I think we have more hard conversations because, like, one of the reasons we have so many hard conversations or feel like there's so many hard conversations to have is because we don't do a very good job of actually recognizing, like, here are the people around me who it's worth fighting with. Like, it's worth fighting with these people because there's a depth of relationship I want to keep. Only fight with people. Only have fights with people when you know those relationships are actually worth the effort of the fight. And the last thing is be self-aware. Know why it is that this conversation is hard for you. So if you're having a hard conversation, if you're finding conversation difficult or hard, the primary thing to figure out is not why the topic is difficult to talk about, because we tend to project. We're like, well, this is a hard conversation. No. Why is it hard for you to have that conversation? Be aware enough of what it is in you that makes the conversation hard so you can go in with a little bit of humility. You can go in with a little less fear of the actual conversation, the actual topic, because you're aware of, like, this is why it's hard for me. It's hard for me because of this history. It's hard for me because I'm afraid of this loss. It's hard for me because I don't know if I can articulate this. Why is it hard for you? Hard conversations are never hard just because the topic is difficult. They're almost always hard because something in us is either afraid or nervous or has already quit in some way, shape, or form. So thank you again for your questions. There are like 6 or 7 that I didn't get to this week that I may actually build another podcast around. But I'm going to start doing this at the tail end of these episodes is I'm going to read a short prayer. This is actually a book that Scott Erickson and I are releasing in October of 2025. So just in a few months. So I'm going to close it out with this prayer from our book, In the Low. I am told that my body will last only 74 years. On an earth that has seen 53 million of my lifetimes. Teach me the peace of knowing that I am not everything, nor am I nothing. Remind me, far better than being needed, I am precious and I am cherished. Rescue me from the trap of being important. Relieve me of the weight that comes with being necessary. Until next time.